Hey, welcome to Soul Hub. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about my 5 top techniques for entering into a state of presence, or basically into a state of higher consciousness, because that's what presence is. And then I'm even going to give you a bonus technique at the very end. All right. And so this is possibly the most important thing that you could learn. Why? Because we can talk about all spiritual concepts all day long, and we can talk about things that require a certain amount of understanding, conceptual understanding, and so forth, but it needs to be embodied. It needs to be put into practice. And the way to put something into practice is to drop, like I always say, drop from head to heart, which really means get out of your mind, get into your body, get into the senses, get into a state of presence that is beyond the mind. And from that state of presence, then everything you really want becomes possible. There's a joy just to being in presence. There's a fulfillment. Love starts pouring more out of you. But then even your life, things in your life, your circumstances change more. Why? Because right now, for the vast majority of humanity, their life is almost totally, exclusively, or, for the most part, dictated by their conditioning, by their mind, by their emotions, by all the mind patterns that are really on autoplay. They think they have free will, but it's not true. And, for most of us, that's still the case to some degree. For others, it's their whole life. For some of us, it's, smaller and smaller parts, but there's still something there that is kind of making decisions automatically. And that's what's making your life progress in a certain way. And so learning to get out of that automatic way of being, that unconscious conditioning, and come into a state of presence brings choice into the matter, allows one to make choices beyond their conditioned programming, and those end up being, when they come from a state of presence, a choice that is for the highest good of you as an individual, but also for the highest good of the whole, for everyone's highest good. And that can impact your life in very good ways on every aspect of your life, even on the physical, everyday level. You just make better choices and things work out better in a way too. While you're also feeling fulfilled. So it's a win-win. It's this is where the rubber meets the road. This is what it's all about. It comes down to, can you actually practice this in your life? And so I wanted to share some very practical techniques with you in this episode. And I don't want to just tell you about them. I want to walk you through them. So this is going to be more of an experiential type of, video, right? It's going to be experiential, so you can do them with me and really get a feel for what they're like. All right. And so let's start with the first technique, or as I like to call them, portals to presence, or portals to higher consciousness. And the first one is one that I learned from 2 teachers. One is Eckhart Tolle, and the other is my mentor, Richard Haidt. They both stress this one very much, and it's a very, very powerful technique. And it's really the technique of being aware of the inner energy field of the body. All right? And let's go through it. I'm going to guide you through it, and we're going to do all of these with eyes open. And the reason why we're going to do them with eyes open is because the whole point of this is so you can take these into your everyday life. They can be used as a meditation in and of themselves, even when you're alone, even with your eyes closed. They can be a beautiful meditation. But the whole point is to be able to take them into your everyday life, right? And to be able to be using them at work, when you're with your kids or spouse or friends or doing anything. And the more you practice them in everyday life, the more your life will start changing. And, on this channel, I've talked a lot about, various ways of shifting your mental perspective, right? Of seeing things from a new angle. And those are very powerful ways to help you. But it's only when they're combined with actual presence practices that the full power is really realized and that you start having a true transformation in your life. And so it's just a great combination. And so the first technique is the inner body awareness. And what you want to do is just right here, right now, don't look at your hands. And we're going to start with the hands simply because they're the place that's the easiest to be felt by pretty much all people. And without looking at your hands, the question is, how do you know your hands exist? And if you're just to feel into that, can you feel your hands without looking at them? And pretty much everyone can feel their hands without looking at them. Well, what is that? What is this feeling? Well, you're essentially feeling them from the inside, right? And that is the aliveness of your hands. And so that is the inner body. There's an aliveness there. There's a sort of tingling. There's a sort of vibration. There's just a feeling of the existence of your hands, right? That's what you want to focus on. So let's focus on it for a few seconds here. All right. And so now that you have a feel for what it's like, because you're really just feeling, right? The idea of full body awareness is to feel the full body like that. Now, it can help to start with a scan. And let's do this together and then feel the whole body. So you start with your head and face. Let's start there. And just feel what it's like to have one, to have a head, to have a face. Feel the aliveness of it. And let's go down to your neck. And your shoulders. And your arms, including your hands. And your chest and stomach. In your back, in your pelvic area, in your legs, including your feet. Now, if there's any blind spots, any spots that don't feel alive, you can't feel tingling, that's okay. The more you practice this, the more you can start to bring them to life if you focus on that part. But for now, let's just kind of feel the whole body, the whole inner body all at once. And you can do this kind of by sending waves of awareness from head all the way to toe and back. But then eventually you can just feel the whole body. So you see there's this aliveness, there's this energy field inside the body, and that's what we're feeling. Now this technique is a beautiful one, not only because it gets you in the state of presence, and the reason it does that is because you can't be feeling the body intimately and thinking at the same time. And by default, when you're not thinking, you're in presence. That's as simple as that. That's how simple as it is for all these techniques. But it's also... it has a lot of other benefits. This technique, once you really put awareness inside your body like this, the body loves that. So you start forming a deeper relationship with the body. It can start healing physical ailments in that way, just because there's more consciousness filling certain parts of the body. That's how you could think of it, literally consciousness filling the body. And, you could just have this deeper connection with this physical vehicle. There's just like this love that grows just by this simple practice. And the beautiful thing about this is that this is one of the easiest ones to take into the day with you. So the idea here is that as you go about your day, instead of giving your full attention to the outside world, instead of, just kind of being caught up in what you're doing, whether it's work or family or friends or just going out or driving or whatever it is, and we tend to just let all of our attention go outwards, you try to keep some inside feeling the energy field of the body. And if you do that, it's much harder to get caught up in the ego. It's much harder for it to trip you up because some part of you will still be rooted in being. And that's the beauty of this. All right? And so that's technique number 1. And later at the end, I'm going to share how you can even start combining some of these. But technique number 2 is something very, very simple, but very powerful. And it's focus here on your heart center. And what you want to do is you want to just have this sense of ease. It's almost like you're sighing from here and with this feeling of ease, like, and you don't have to sigh like outwardly. You can just do it internally. But that's what I want to explain it via the sigh, because that's the feeling inside. It's kind of like this gentle, soft release here. It's like, and the feeling behind it is a feeling of like everything is perfect as it is. Everything that's occurring is exactly what needs to be occurring, whatever's happening in your life. And so this is a beautiful technique to whenever you find yourself feeling stressed, feeling tense. And that's what you want to do. You want to get in a habit of scanning yourself and scanning your energy field for how you're feeling throughout the day. This is what gets you in this practice of being present. And so you want to, anytime you notice you're being stressed, which is usually because of stressful thoughts, you turn to this and you can just very quickly go, it's like the softening. It's a softening technique. It's a attitude of ease. And what allows this attitude of ease or a sense of surrender, and you're not surrendering something outside of you, you're surrendering to your higher self, which is, the universe itself. You're all one. It has your best interest at heart. But the idea behind this is when you're doing this is to feel that anything that happens to be arising, even if you think you don't like it, is exactly what it needs to be arising. Why? Just because it is. And so, right? Just this very simple. That's the whole technique. But you'll be shocked at what it can do. Just this sense of ease comes in. It's like, hey, why am I stressing? Ease. And just that instantly puts you in a state of presence, because instantly you drop out of your mind, your body relaxes, and you can stay in a sense of ease. And here's what you can do. You can continue doing this. You can continue going every few seconds, just softening, softening, softening. And if you stay with that, it's like this energy field of softness, of gentleness, of ease stays with you. And here's the thing, that is presence, that is your true self, that is your higher self being embodied inside the body, and you're in touch with that, so you're identifying more with that than you are with the persona or the ego or the mind, and that's a state of presence. So that's technique number 2, all right? Technique number 3 is also an extremely simple one. It's been around throughout the ages, and that is following the breath. But I want to teach it to you in a different way, because a lot of people start following the breath. It kind of can become willful. They're just going, but there's a way to do it that is very different. And the way to follow the breath is the way I like to think about it is assume or pretend that you are a soul who's experiencing the human body for the first time ever. You just entered, you just connected with a human body, right? And you're experiencing it for the first time ever. And so imagine how you would breathe. Imagine how you would savor every breath, like, what is this? In absolute wonder and awe, like, And so let's breathe like that for a little bit, just in wonder and savoring the breath. And you don't have to make it an extra long breath, whatever your breath is, but just be intimately in touch with it as if it's the first time you breathe and you're just awed by the very breathing process. And as you can see, when you breathe like this, it feels really good to the body. In fact, you can even amplify this by, as you're breathing, it's like as if the whole body is breathing, as if air is going not just through your nose, but through your feet, through your legs, through your abdomen, everywhere. It's just everything is bringing in air. Try that. And if it's not air, maybe it's like light. It's life energy that is being brought in. So as you see, when you're breathing in this way, it's not very hard to be in a state of presence at all. There's a state of joy that starts arising, a state of innocent wonder. And that is the essence of presence. You can't be in a bad mood while breathing like this. You can't be stuck in the mind and the ego while breathing like this. So that's technique number 3. Very simple one, but very powerful. Technique number 4 is one I taught in the previous episode. So if you haven't watched that, check it out. That was an episode about how to use mantras and affirmations in a radically different way. And so I'll just go briefly over it here. But this technique it utilizes the mind, but in a very powerful way that goes beyond mind. And what I mean by that is you can say an affirmation, but you say it in a very different way. So for instance, instead of saying I am peaceful, or I am loving, or I am kind, you say I am peace, I am love, I am kindness. Now, why does this work to put you in a state of presence? Well, because when you say I am loving and kind and peaceful, you're talking about the person. A person can be peaceful, a person can be kind or loving. But when you say I am peace, I am love, I am kindness, only a state of presence can be that. It's not a person, it's a state. And so all of a sudden, your mind is shifting out of personhood into a state of being when it relates to those words, right? And so let's try it. Let's try it. I am peace. I am serenity. I am love. I am joy. I am kindness. And so for me, what it feels like is this expansive state of energy far beyond my body, all around my body, is that quality. And I am that. I become that quality. And it's like I'm enveloping the body and everything around it in that quality. And of course, when you're doing that, by default, you're in a state of presence. That is a state of higher consciousness because, again, you can't be in the mind. So this affirmation, this use of affirmation in going from, personhood, for instance, I am free to I am freedom. All of a sudden, you are that quality itself of consciousness, and that acts as a bridge or a portal directly to that quality of consciousness. So that's another technique that can quickly put you into presence. And this one is another very easy one to use throughout your day. You can be going around, and if it's hard to stay in touch with the body or something, you could be repeating to yourself every minute or two, I am whatever quality relates to you the most, but take a few seconds to feel into that. Don't just say it and just kind of mindlessly, but like, I am serenity, and feel the serenity. I am freedom, feel the freedom of being this expansive spaciousness, right? And when you do that, that is very, very powerful. Okay? And so that's the fourth technique. And the last technique, and there's actually a bonus technique, so I'm going to give you two more. But the last technique is listening. And you want to listen to sound, but also to the silence beneath the sound. This is a very powerful technique because sounds arise, like if you're just listening, and you listen intently, like very engaged type listening, like you're very interested in what's gonna arise, and you're just in a pure curiosity, a pure innocent state of being. You're listening like with your whole being, just wondering what's gonna arise next. That's it. It's a relaxed but very engaged and intent listening. And whatever sounds, like for instance right now, if I'm listening, there's sounds of someone, I think, mowing their lawn outside. There's sounds of birds. But here's the thing. I'm telling you them now. But the idea when you're doing it is you don't label them. You don't label, oh, those are birds. Oh, that's someone mowing their lawn. Oh, that's someone. What you do is you listen as if you're just listening to the vibration of the sound. Again, as if you're the soul who doesn't know what that sound is. It's just the vibration of it. And you just listen to everything arising simultaneously. You don't fixate on one sound. You're just listening. And you can't be doing this while thinking at the same time, once again. But where this gets more beautiful is if as you're listening, you start listening to the silence. The all-pervasive silence from which sounds are arising and disappearing, arising and disappearing. Listen to it now, even if there's a lot of sound around you. Even if there's something that's called noise, don't think of it as noise. That's just a mind labeling it. Just hear the vibration only. And it can start becoming beautiful. But then also, hear the silence from which it's arising. If you go deeper into this, you can start almost becoming the silence, like you are this pervasive silence from which everything is arising. I like to use this with music. Sometimes I put headphones, I get into this deeply relaxed state, and I become the silence, and all sounds are arising out of me, but not me personally, me, this expansive state, and it's such a beautiful practice. And so this technique quickly puts you into a state of presence because, again, you can't be thinking while listening to silence or while listening to the vibration of sounds. And there's a joy in it. As with all these things, there's just a joy in them. Okay? And then for a final bonus technique, this one kind of combines. It can combine all the others. But this one is a deep present moment awareness. So again, it's very helpful to think of it as if you're this new soul that's just experiencing physicality for the first time. And here you are. You exist. And feel existence itself. Just this. Feel the existence of the moment. Right now. Savor the moment. Literally, like everything about it. Sounds, sights, feeling. The feeling of you being in the moment. Savor the perfection of the moment. Whatever might be arising in it. Ooh, this one is just joyful. It really is. You're feeling your own existence as inseparable from whatever's arising in the moment. It's this feeling of just being. It's everything. You're just savoring the moment as it's arising. This is a beautiful one. And so as you see, each of these can put you in a state of presence very quickly. And then you can combine them like this one as a total combination, or you combine certain aspects of them. So for instance, one practice that I'm currently using that's resonating with me is combining inner body awareness with that second technique of ease, right? And then I feel the moment beyond my body, all around my body. And so it's kind of like going through the day and trying as much as possible to keep some awareness inside, then remind that ease, and then expand that beautiful, easeful feeling all around the body. Expand it out and then become that space. So that's a technique that I'm using. Now, a couple of years ago, I couldn't have been able to do that. It would have felt very willful. Whereas now it feels kind of much more natural and relaxed, like it just happens. So practice and experiment with what works for you. These are several different tools that I've given you. Feel into what feels the most joyful, but also what you feel like you can actually keep up the practice of in your everyday life the most. For some people, it might be easier to focus on the breath. For some people, it could be just that ease feeling. Some people, the inner body. Some people, the sound, or a combination thereof. Or at different parts of the day, you can use different ones. It depends. But I would recommend, practice with these, experiment, and then pick, one or two that you really want to focus on, you want to really get good at. Because here's what's going to happen. I have to warn you. As beautiful as these will feel, and as beautiful as they are, and as much joy as they bring into you, and as much more silence and clarity and so forth, they will also agitate the hell out of the mind. The mind will resist these like the plague. Because to the mind, these are, I'm calling them portals into presence or higher consciousness. To the mind, they're portals into annihilation. Because in that moment, the mind is not existent in any way. In that moment, there is no ego. You have to be in the mind and in its stories to be in ego. But in that moment, there's just stillness. There's whatever is arising, whatever sense or whatever energetic perception that you're experiencing, and that's it. And so, of course, the ego's not in control in that moment, and it's actually losing control. So it will resist this. So it'll come up with all sorts of reasons for why you shouldn't practice these, why you should do something else as a distraction instead, check your phone, do something else, because it'll resist these. That's number one. Number two, in the beginning when you practice this, you can kind of get fatigued. In fact, it can be tiring. Quite tiring. And the reason for that is because initially when we practice them, we tend to be kind of willful. We're trying to do them versus relax. And that just takes some practice. There's kind of no way around it. You just got to practice and it gets easier. And then they start filling you with energy and you start feeling a lot less fatigued than even in normal times. But in the beginning, it can feel tiring if you're trying to keep this up all day long. But it's very worth it. Don't think that there's something wrong because of that. Just keep reminding yourself that, move towards effortless effort, move towards less willfulness and just kind of more relaxed, playful attitude. And it'll get easier and easier. But realize that if it feels hard or feels tiring, that's normal. So that's not a reason to give up. In fact, what's actually happening is that the brain is being taxed to experience life in a new way, even though you're not using your brain per se, not in thought, but it's still being used to perceive in different ways. And so typically what we have is, a sort, like it's basically neural networks in the brain. And each one's like a highway and it keeps firing whenever you're doing some behavior or some thought that you're always thinking. And now we're trying to experience something in a very different way. And so when we try to experience it in a different way, all of a sudden now new neural pathways are going to be firing. And these ones are not used that often, and the brain likes to be efficient. It wants to conserve energy, so it likes to go to the one it's used to going to. It's like a highway with deep grooves in it, and it's very hard to go through, create a new highway. And so basically it's going to resist it, but you keep doing it, and eventually that becomes its own highway that's well used, and the brain will start traveling that way. And so you'll start finding it much easier to go into the body, to go into the senses, to go into expanded awareness, to go into the present moment. That's why it takes daily, consistent practice. Okay, so these are a couple things that I had to tell you about, because I don't want you to feel tripped up. Like, you started doing this, they feel so beautiful, but then they start feeling hard, or you start feeling like, oh, I don't want to practice. Nothing is going on wrong if that occurs. In fact, that's what's going to happen. The mind is going to try to resist it. But each time you do it, you will feel better, and it'll give you more motivation to do it more and more and more. And that is the idea, to keep doing these as much as you can throughout the day, and just watch how your life starts changing, and how much more joy you start feeling, and just how everything starts becoming better. Even solutions to complex problems or creative things you need at work or in whatever you're doing will start just flashing into your mind, because you're coming from a more and more still place. So it's very, very powerful. And this can really expand your whole spiritual awakening as a whole, the more you do this throughout the day. And last thing, actually, is that inevitably you will find periods where you look back and you go, oh my God, I wasn't present at all. I wasn't doing any of this. I was stuck in my mind, and I was just going about my, routine. I got so sucked into, the illusion of the world, as if it's all real. And I forgot about presence. I forgot about being. That's okay. That's going to happen, and it's going to happen daily, and it's going to happen a lot. The idea, every time you notice it, forgive yourself, have compassion, and just go back into one of the modes of presence, one of these techniques. Don't beat yourself up about not doing it. Why? Because that's just the mind doing it, and you're getting stuck more into that. It's useless. It's futile. And so you just get better at it. In the past, I would have the intention to do it, and then I'd find the entire day I went and I wasn't present at all, or hours and hours. Now, it's hard for 15, 20 minutes to go by where I don't notice if I haven't been present. And sometimes I get sucked into whatever, like a lot of work or family or whatever. There's a lot of people around, and I get sucked into just being in the world, being in a state of the mind or the ego. But then there's a noticing. And the moment you notice that you're not present, you're present, because only presence can notice, non-presence. And so it's rare now for anything more like 15 to 20 minutes to go by without me, noticing, if I wasn't present, to notice, I'm not present. Now, that doesn't mean I can always go back into a state of presence. Sometimes there's such a momentum going on with whatever we're doing that it can just suck you right back in. But then you can become present again. I like to liken it to, a fan. And this is a great analogy I heard, where, you can turn off the power to the fan, but if it was spinning very fast, it's going to keep spinning. Even if there's no power, there's momentum there. It's going to keep going around until it finally starts slowing down, and then it dies out. Well, that's kind of like the mind, the ego. Even when you start awakening, even when you start doing these practices, there's still years and years and years of conditioning, and it has a certain momentum. It's going to keep playing out for a while. And so that's okay. You're going to get sucked back into the world and not being present. The idea is, every time you notice it, you just try to go back into presence, right? And believe me, it'll get easier and easier and easier. Now there are days where, I'm continually going in and out of presence. I'm not at a point where I can just be in a state of presence all the time. But to be in it much of the time and get back in it when I'm not, and not have long periods without it, that can happen more and more and more. And that is happening more and more and more. And then there are times where, there's like an off day, and that's okay. You just forgive yourself and you try again. But if you do this, believe me, it's going to change your life. Okay, so I hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.